All right, the Minding Your Business podcast. This is episode number 204, Entrepreneurship, Real Estate, Trending News. There's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron. Excited. Thank everyone for your participation, your shout outs, your support of International Podcast Day. Hope all podcasters near and far, young or old, no matter where you come from or what you look like or what the topic of your show is. I hope you enjoyed that day. Shout out to everyone here in Memphis with Pods in Memphis. Shout out to Ina Esco with Verbally Effective. And Sine did a wonderful job leading that effort on the last episode. Dominic Lawson with the Startup Life podcast, and Paris Sharkey and his entire team with Let's Be Real, the Let's Be Real podcast. So that was tremendous. Thank you all for your support. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star on Apple or wherever you get your podcast content. Helps us continue to grow the Minding Your Business community. And of course, you can always connect with me, champronbrooks.com. That's champronbrooks.com. Listen, I'm excited about today's guest joining all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada. Many of you know that I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's really powerful when you could talk to people in different markets and get different perspectives like we like to bring you here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Ed Zitron joins us. He's the CEO of EZPR, just a tremendous company, media relations company that provides great media support, public relations support, and whatnot to help, startup businesses in the tech space be just a little bit better. Right. And that's the thing about business is just it helps people be just a little bit better and focus in on what they need to focus in on so that they can be better for themselves, be better for their customers and prospects, and then be better for their community. So, Ed, thank you so much, man, for joining today here on episode number 204.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Excellent. So, man, let's jump right into it. Now, first thing, man, I mentioned you're in Las Vegas, and my wife and I, our first anniversary was in Vegas. We love the city. Won a little money there, lost a little money there on the Vegas Strip.
That's what happens.
It's like shit, man. But so tell us a little bit about kind of your upbringing, how you got to where you are, and then how you transitioned from the California market, over to Vegas.
So we're a media relations company, so we help people get coverage. So written up in like TechCrunch or what have you. Just a random example there. What we have found is that this is not a job that requires you to be in any actual place.
Yes.
And for the most part, I came to a point last year, actually, before the pandemic, where I was like, I'm kind of done with California. The effective tax rate there is insane. It is like, God, it was like 12% some years. It's just on top of an already grisly return. And it's like, the value of being in California even beforehand was honestly kind of degrading. And then the pandemic happened as we were already planning to move. And suddenly all the people who said you're crazy for moving were like, actually, how's Vegas? You want to tell me a little bit about Vegas? It's like, you're too late. But in all seriousness, though, there's no state income tax, which is great. But also it's a beautiful residential place. Everyone assumes it's just the Strip, when actually it's a huge residential community as well, which is awesome. But yeah, we moved out here in May. Took us that long just because honestly, the pandemic slightly slowed that down as well, which was a lot of fun. That wasn't completely mind-bending, but it's something interesting where we're seeing a lot more companies just frankly thinking about leaving California. And I think you're going to see a lot of movement. Everyone's saying Austin, which is absolutely their choice. Everyone's saying Austin or Texas or even worse, Florida. And I think that you're going to see people move back to California from there just because the quality, like Texas, I mean, I lived in North Carolina for a while, so I'm somewhat used to the southern temperature. I do not think most people moving from California are.
Right.
And I think it might drive them a little bit insane dealing with it. Just because
you get there and it's 110 degrees. Yeah.
And then somehow you still get snow that year, and it's like, why am I?
Right.
What am I doing here? What am I doing with my life? And so, But you are going to see, I think more people are going to come to Vegas, but Vegas, even you yourself said it, it's like Vegas has a terrible rep.
Yeah.
As far as like what you can actually do here. And the assumption is, oh, you can only gamble and there's nothing else. When in fact, when we start flying and when people actually start using airplanes again, you'll realize that Vegas is about as if you moved to Vegas and flew into California every day, you'd still be saving money. It's just California is so expensive, and it's going to get more expensive.
Yeah,
I'm like super anti-California now, but I still work with tons of companies there. But it's interesting how that shift is going to get punctuated extreme. I mean, it's already happening. People are already moving, and the smart money's on Vegas. But one thing that kind of knocked Vegas back was the whole Tony Hsieh, I think you pronounce his name, the CEO of Zappos. He had a failed thing here where he went to Old Vegas and was like, oh, we're going to bring companies here. We're going to bring companies to Old Vegas. And it's like, no, you don't want to do that, mate. No one wants that. And also he did the classic thing of throwing a bunch of money at a community without actually talking to anyone in the community. And so
that doesn't go over well.
People did not adopt that very well. But yeah, it's somewhat depressing that Vegas hasn't grown yet, but bully for me, I got a nice house and everyone here is a lot more normal in California. Anyway, bizarre rant to go on, but here we are.
Well, no, that's interesting. And so when you say it's residential there in Vegas, what are some of the things? Are there like, suburban neighborhoods? Is there, I guess, how is it arranged? Because again, I've been, it was hot as hell.
Yes.
In June. I've been one other time before then, but so it's always during the summer when I go. But I've never ventured off to really see it. So is it just like, if you were comparing it to North Carolina, would it have any similarities, or is it just
no? Well, there's no humidity, which is, as you well know, out in Tennessee, is a bastard. It sucks so bad. I hate humidity so much, and I'm from London, so trust me, I know.
Yeah.
And the humidity sucks. Here, it's like everyone's like, oh, it's hot, and it's like, why did you think California was cold? As well, it's very bizarre because California is not like a cold state, but it also isn't a satisfyingly hot one. So like you still get the humidity, but you don't get crazy. You don't get like nice. I don't know. I never lived in LA, which apparently like has lovely summers, and bully for everyone who lives there. But in my experience, the summers in like Danville or Oakland or San Francisco kind of sucked. And also no one has AC, which when in the few days where you do get like a heat wave is so sad. I mean, again, you're in Tennessee. You wouldn't go without AC. You're not crazy.
Right. No, hell no. Right.
But yeah, it's interesting though. And I mean, but it gets hot, but it's a manageable heat because it's Vegas. If you don't have AC here, you're probably dead.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's like if you lose your AC, you just
forget it. Right. I mean, you
will probably die. Yeah. I mean, that's literally something that happens. Like, I think that if your AC goes out, you're just done. But no, maybe I'm just being dramatic. But in all seriousness, it's a lovely place to live. I love it here. Yeah, and the rating just moved, which is awesome.
Right.
And they might actually be good.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, definitely could be. So Ed, you started from, kind of the beginning, man. What was your upbringing like? How did you get into business? How did you get into, what you're doing today?
So I moved to America in 2008. I was a games journalist since I was like 16. So a good long time. And I moved to America because I got really bored of, a lot of things in London. I'm not a big fan of England anymore. It's way before we had Boris Johnson as well. But I moved and I was like, I want to do something that allows me to live in New York. So I went into public relations, and everyone had lied about what that job was. Just quite literally, just
they lied.
every single book, just a complete lie. They act like you're going to be doing press conferences, and you're going to be doing all these marvelous things. And the truth is, you're not doing any of that stuff. For the most part, PR is like janitorial work. And you are pitching journalists. You're getting to know journalists, and you're saying, okay, journalist, I want you to write about X client for Y reason. And that's great. And everyone's happy. And like, that is a good business. It's also a difficult business. And when you're starting out, it is absolutely, it is one of the most difficult things in the world. No one teaches you how to do it. And yeah, it sucks. I'm a big whiner when it comes to that, but it's because I got here and everyone had lied to me about how easy it was. Every book suggested it was super easy. And it was like, this is not easy at all. This is extremely difficult and trying and exhausting. Again, big time complainer here, but I think I learned quite quickly how to get good at it, and then moved to another firm from the first firm I was in, which was awful, terrible experience working there. Because again, I'd read the book of the guy who I worked for, and he's just made up stuff, just complete falsehoods. You're never doing a press conference. You're never doing anything like that. It's just grind work. But then I moved to another agency that was a lot better to me, and I learned kind of how to really build these relationships with reporters, which meant that when I got clients, I could go to a reporter and say, hey, look, I got X client. X client knows Y. Do you want to talk to them about Y? And if you're smart and you get together your stuff and you say, all right, I know what the hell I'm talking about, then you can start lining up a client base that appeals to these specific reporters and kind of on some level, Vegas jokes aside, rig the dice. And you can say, all right, this is going to be this is going to be this is going to be a sustainable business. And it's worked for me really well. It's worked really well, actually. And I've actually stayed I've stayed relatively successful within it. I don't think the business is going anywhere. I've done this for eight years now on my own. And I started my firm as a means of, as kind of spreading this business acumen that I already had. Yeah. And it's done really well for me.
Excellent. And Ed, were you already in kind of media relations and PR and that sort of thing?
Media relations was something I worked. No, I was a journalist in London.
Okay. Gotcha. And so how would you compare, journalism in London to when you got to the States? And you came at an interesting time in 2008 when there was a lot of
when things were going
stuff going on. So, talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, when I moved in 2008, I was moving from London to the worst recession since the one we're in right now. And it was brutal, man. It was like one of the darkest times. I mean, I was just like, I moved in the media market, like everyone was getting fired and everyone was like depressed and everyone was pissed off. And I was just kind of like in the middle of this mess being like, oh God, everyone's so upset. Everyone's so mad at me. And I moved into this job where I was calling up reporters and being like, hey, do you want to talk to my client? While these people were like watching their colleagues getting laid off.
Yeah. And who were your clients then, Ed?
Oh God, they were. I'm not naming them, but they were like spurious startups because my first boss was kind of a charlatan.
Yeah. Okay.
And so he just like tell anyone what they wanted to hear. It's really common.
Right.
and so it was just, and so I was working with like really depressingly bad companies. Right. As they and it was just, and I had to learn very quickly, like what actually worked with reporters and what did not.
Right.
And that was an experience to say the least.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so, Ed, so you get here, and you're kind of off to a rough start with, kind of journalism and that sort of thing. So how do you get to where you launch your company? With EZPR. Where's the idea come from? What's the kind of the motivation? And
because like I was saying, when I got into the job, the main thing was I had to pitch journalists. I had to talk to journalists about why, like, what you're working on right now and how can a client I'm working on fit into that. And sometimes it's as simple as a reporter might review gadgets and I have a gadget, or it might be, okay, we've got X company that can speak to Y subject, and this is why they will be good. And then you get them on the phone with the reporter's happy. Now, the thing is with that is that can be a very special, like that can be a very special calculation. That can be a somewhat spurious one at times, because sometimes the reporter will talk to someone and say, oh, this is great. And then the moment they actually get around to it, they're like, oh, actually, I'm not going to use them for the story. Or you can speak to a reporter and they will say, oh, well, actually, I'm no longer at this outlet because I got fired. It's a really common one. And so what I ended up doing was building my own business where I would find when I was at 2 agencies and I moved out on my own, and I started basically recruiting clients that would obviously pay me to pitch to reporters. And those clients would say, okay, Ed, what can you actually get me with the media? My other clients realistically are, they're the journalists. The journalists are the ones who I really consider perhaps not the most important, but pretty important to the whole thing. Because if you're not getting clients that fit with the reporters, then you may as well not be bothering, because otherwise you're going to get clients and say, oh, client, you'll be really good for this. But in the end, the client's actually like not good for it at all. It's a push and pull. And so, but I got very lucky because the first few clients I got were really good for the media. And I built these relationships with reporters for years, not back in the UK. I built them when I actually got to America. I made friends with these reporters. I got to learn what it is that they actually care about and why they might what kind of clients would actually fit in with their greater purview, if you will.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of grew my client base because I do really well for a client. Client would refer me to someone else. And if they were good, if they fit in with the reporters I knew, I'd get another client that would fit in with the reporters I know. So the reporters would be happy, the clients would be happy, get more clients. I don't do any outgoing new business. Clients come to me.
Yeah.
I haven't had to do outgoing new business ever.
Yeah.
So
it's all word of mouth. It's just,
pretty much,
and
referrals. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. It's doing great work and having referrals from happy clients.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. That's one of the best ways, quite frankly, to build your business. If you could do it that way,
it's the best way, because your sales are all warm leads.
Right. They're all warm leads, and the cost for acquiring a sale is just drastically low. As opposed to
it's zero basically, other than time, which is not possible to replenish, but still good.
Right. Exactly. And so, let's talk a little bit about the times. I know we were talking offline, Ed, about kind of, obviously you've got the pandemic that's going on now.
Yes.
Talk to me about how things were kind of going and maybe humming along 2019, kind of before the pandemic hit, and then kind of compare and contrast those times to, once March hit and, we kind of had, government shutdowns of industry and all that type of thing. Talk about, that comparison and contrast of kind of pre-pandemic to current pandemic.
So I think that the best way to look at it is I had the worst January of my business ever.
Wow.
Well, ever. I mean, if you compare it to if you compare it to the first months of EZPR, I guess it was better, but it was probably the worst year we'd had since 2013. It was insane. And so we were, I wouldn't say we struggled at any point because we've always kept it quite lean, but we lost 4 clients in 1 week, all completely black swan event, just nothing related to any actual performance, everything to do with how can I put this? Everything to do with clients just having to leave for the reasons that clients leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they might have left for I guess trying to hunker down, because
it was we had one actually it was more like a 2-week period when people leaving. Anyways, one left because of they got told you've got 2 months to make this business profitable or you're done. We'll pull our investment. One had a massive launch shift and they actually came back to work with us since. One literally went under.
Yeah.
And another one, I can't even remember the reason. But then a few weeks later, we had one saying there is this pneumonia out in China, and it's really bad. We're going to have to shut down things. And I was like, that's weird. I hope this isn't bad. But it meant that by the time the pandemic had hit, I was already in crisis mode. Yeah. I was already spending like sleepless nights trying to work out what the hell to do. So when the pandemic had hit, I was already freaking the hell out every day. Anyway, so we have always been remote as well. Specifically, when I started back in 2013, before I'd even hired anyone, I was like, I'm not doing this bullshit of having to do an office. It's it doesn't make any sense to anyone. It's literally just, it is something that people do for the sake of making themselves feel better.
Yeah. And you know what? You and I have that same attitude, Ed. That's hilarious, because I haven't heard really anybody else say that other than just me in my head, that about the whole office space thing. But
it's just it makes you feel more important. But interesting aside, when it comes to PR firms as well. PR firms love to hire people that talk good. Right. Not necessarily do work, but they love doing documents. And they love having like 80 people on a team. That's their favorite thing in the world. They love to have like 80 people on you feel like you're getting value because there's like 7 people on your account or whatever. It's complete bullshit, but nevertheless, that's what they do. And they come around, and they were used to like these are the people who did the best off of the office economy. Right. Like they're the ones who were used to having an office presence and all that good stuff. And so when all of this happened, those people lost all of their edge. Mm-hmm. There's no advantage with them anymore. When you have to be on a phone call with 5 people, it's not quite as impressive as being on a physical meeting with a bunch of people. Right. So suddenly I started, and I've since been in a lot of conversations where basically I've had, if not a huge advantage, I've had more of an advantage because, frankly, people are like, how can I put this nicely? People don't give much of a shit anymore about where you are. And so when I tell people I'm remote, they don't kind of sneer at me. And these big firms have lost the nice person advantage. Like no one gives a shit anymore if you have 100 people all called like Brittany on your phone call. Like no one gives a crap. Right. There's no advantage anymore to you. You don't get anything else. You don't get, like, no one is going to hire you anymore over that. And the big team advantage that has kept a lot of these agencies going for so long has diminished. There's just, you're now getting evaluated on things you've actually done for the client. Yeah. Oh boy. That is not good news for a lot of these agencies. They don't like me for saying stuff like that, but I don't like them. I don't like them, so we're even.
So the feel is mutual.
Yeah, a lot of these PR firms don't like me one bit because I say things like that. And also they do this thing. And if you're doing, and any listener who's doing like their own media relations, who's doing their own thing where they're going out to reporters, let me tell you something for free. Reporters don't like being phoned. Don't phone them up. Don't do it. No one wants that. A lot of PR firms will tell you that's what they need to do. You don't need to do that. In fact, reporters will get quite pissed off if you call them on the telephone. Yeah. In fact, I can guarantee I haven't called a reporter on the phone that hasn't asked me to call in 8 years. Wow. I think I did it once because there's a fella at Inc. called Will who frankly is a lovely fella and literally told me you can cold call me. But anyone else, I don't bother just because reporters hate you so much. They hate you so much for that. I cannot be clear enough like how much they despise you for that. Wow. Yeah, I guess this is all insightful, learning all the behind the curtains about the media and how nice you guys play in the sandbox. I play nice with the reporters. The reporters are the ones I actually care about. But when it comes to other PR firms, it's a weird industry because everyone's like, everyone's all pally, but not like it's very passive aggressive. So they're not actually friendly. They're just friendly to each other. And they never talk ill of the industry. Like they never like insult the industry. I'm like, no, that's not, that doesn't sound good to me. I'm going to go ahead and say what the hell I want because I realized early on in my career, because I've never been normal since the day I was born. And I realized fairly early on in my career, like, if it, like, there was no danger in me calling out bad practices, because the only people I'd piss off would be other PR people. And for the most part, that weirdly does not affect your job prospects, because it's weird. Outwardly, they're like, oh, you can't be mean to PR people. Inwardly, they're like, we need results. We need you to get the media to cover us. So going to go ahead and still hire you.
Yeah.
Very silly people.
So Ed, as you're going through the pandemic now, so we're quickly coming up to month 7.
Yes.
In terms of dealing with the pandemic. So how has it been? Has it improved for you as you made the move to Vegas? And you hit on a really good point. And even when you were talking about California, about how, there's not, companies are realizing, like, hell, I don't need this big office space. People can work and be, productive from anywhere, as long as they have the right tools and the right coaching and development.
They're actually productive.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, they are. I've been at home since March, and I'll tell you, I've probably done more business in these 6 or 7 months than I did probably all of last year. And I had a fairly decent year last year. But I'll tell you that so far it's been really good. And for many reasons, right? Look at you and I. We're doing a podcast over a streaming service, so we're already accustomed to and comfortable using this type of technology. Whereas maybe some other people, didn't really see the value till they were forced to do so, and then now they see where there's some value. Although
it's like that being Batman, I was born in the shadows. But no, in all seriousness, that's the thing. It's like a lot of these agencies, and it's any industry that's physical, I think, has this issue where you are used to physical presence and you are used to what that physical presence gets you. And frankly, if you are too used to relying on physical presence, by being blunt, hiring attractive people who perhaps you have an aesthetic you are pushing versus actual product, then maybe the issue is you. Maybe your business was never that stable, because now all these dipshits are having to get back out, like they're having to go on phone calls and Zoom chats and all that, and it doesn't matter. No one cares. No one cares how attractive you are on Zoom, which is great for me. Yeah. And
that's why you didn't turn your camera on for this.
That's because I'm honestly not sure if the cable's working, but I bet if it's the funny thing is, you know what, maybe I'll be an asshole and turn it on in a second. But yeah, I think that one of the things that people don't realize is that you have to be actually good at your job.
Right.
And if you're not good at your job, like if you're not doing something that actually helps the client, and the client only thinks they have to pay you, the moment that they realize they don't, your ass is grass. You are done.
Right. And I'll tell you, Ed, that, one of the things that, going back to your point that you made about kind of that aesthetics, is that I remember there was a company that'll go nameless on this podcast, unless, they want to pay to advertise or want to bring me in to do an equity partnership. But their motto that wasn't on paper, but what they always did, and of course, you think about this, you spent a little time in North Carolina, so you can appreciate this from a Southern perspective. They would hire only, these girls, that went to these SEC schools, right? So they would hire a bunch of.
I went to Penn State.
Yeah, and so they had a very loose dress code for them. All this was this was a financial company, so all the men have on navy blue suits with red tie and white shirt. Looks like they made them in the lab and just put them there, right?
Facsimile people,
right? And then you have all these women that are all from Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Tennessee and Alabama. And they're all in sundresses and, flip flops. And then all the guys are in $1,000 suits and, ties and all that type of stuff, slick back hair. And, it's just hilarious. But that was their thing. They hired, every Allison and Heather that they could from Arkansas and Florida and everywhere else that looked like, to them, looked great in the sundress. And so it's just interesting how that was the dynamic that was almost bigger than, what the hell they were doing anyway, which was supposed to be serving clients and prospects in the community. But instead of that, they were motivated by, that piece of doing business, and it ultimately it cost them, right? But
yeah,
it's just interesting how.
So now I'm going to do a big reveal. So a lot of these people also don't have professional video setups, and they've been very slow to get them. And I set up mine specifically for this because, for once, all of the dithering and stupid crap I've done to put a professional video setup that I've never used in my house now actually has value. I have lighting. I have all sorts. I got all my crap behind me. I've got the DSLR going. And that's the thing. Like, none of these people prepared for nor actually adapted to this new world at all. They all came into it gun shy, worried that they were, worried is not the word. They were anxious at first, but they thought, this will work. I'll just keep doing what I've been doing the whole damn time. The answer is, it doesn't work. And now, no one is, even if we go back to the office, even if we do exactly what we did before, we are going to be in this situation where people are going to say, why am I paying you? Why should I pay you? Is this good? And the answer is no, most cases. And that, however, they also probably don't have my psychosis where I constantly mess with my camera. There we are. That's a little better. And a little bit. I'm always messing with this. That's my stupid thing I do. It's good to have something to focus on during work other than work. And it's funny. It's none of these, like I did this. I had some of this gear lying around and I did it professionally. I got lighting and all that because I was like, you know what? If I'm going on a call and I'm asking someone for $10,000 or $15,000 a month, I'm not going to be like, hey, I look like everyone else. Hey, I have my whatever setup. I want to show them that I'm serious. And also, no one's going back to an office. Just frankly, if you have 8 people on a call, you shouldn't, first of all, but also like, you never, like, none of this is ever going to be, none of this is, like, this is the new normal. And even if you go back to the office, even if you take your whole PR agency back to an office, you're still going to be competing with someone like me.
Who's not spending money on an office and, who's spending that money on something else that's more productive.
Or just not spending that money. Or just not spending it. That's my favorite thing. Just, you don't have to spend money on any of this crap. And even this setup's like maybe about $2,500 worth of stuff, and I didn't need to spend that because I'm just that guy. A lot of that, it's like this should be the table stakes for doing, like, if you're in a very expensive service business like my own, because frankly, you should be showing the client that you give a shit. You should be showing them that you have a professional look, that you have enough care to at least look kind of good. Like, you should. Perhaps I'm not in a suit and tie. And it's interesting how very few people are doing this, and they're doing it because, weirdly enough, being in tech PR, no one in tech PR knows anything about tech. Well, some people do, but for the most part, they don't. And it's embarrassing to me because it's like, come on, you're in technology, own the technology, understand the technology, do the thing you claim to be a part of. But it's with any, like you were discussing with the financial services company, it's like, there are people who go into these, especially the marketing and sales types, who go into these industries and they think that the best thing they can do is learn enough to sound smart and close a deal versus doing good business. And they very rarely do. They're embarrassing. And it is embarrassing to compete with them because it's like, what are you doing here? Like, what was the fuck? Why'd you get into this job? Is it so that you could do crap? Was it so that you could embarrass me? It's just, and that's why we compete. We've had, I can't name the exact gaming company, but one of the big gaming companies that you would absolutely know, work with them for years on the download because you can't, as a service company, actually put their logo on your site. They will sue you. But I worked with them for years because most agencies do such a piss poor job, and they do it because they don't have domain expertise and they don't actually know the reporters. So when you talk to a reporter, if you talk to a reporter and you're like, kind of know what you're talking about, and they ask one question, you're done. You're embarrassed. It's just really sad to me.
Wow, that's that's wild, man. That's wild to say the least. I mean, good grief. And so, I guess, Ed, let's look at it this way too. So today, right? You've got many tech startups. Many have done very well. I'm an equity partner in one. Actually, a company called Leverage. That's leveragecalc.com for everybody that's listening. But leverage financial software that's doing extremely well. Shout out to John Matheson and his entire team over at Leverage. So it looks like, you're seeing a lot of tech companies kind of pop up. Of course, I'm in the banking, kind of field and background. So you see the fintechs and that sort of thing really popping up. What are you seeing just in the tech space as you're working with these companies? Are they kind of, it seems like for a while there was all this money kind of flowing around and you always heard about them popping up and all these investors. Are you seeing that continue, or are you seeing them kind of hunker down with the pandemic and kind of, managing what they're doing with research and development, maybe going to market with beta tests, maybe even more so than before? What are you kind of seeing in that space?
I think the companies that were going to get sunk by the pandemic have already been sunk or about to die. I know there's a big letter that went out from Hollywood that was like, we need to keep movie theaters on so we can keep affording to make movies, signed by the film stars who make $20 million a movie. So 10% of the... Anyways, but a lot of the companies that were going to die have died or are dying like right now. And the funding stop happened. So it's kind of come back. I don't want to say back to normal because I don't know what normal is anymore. I don't think any of us do, frankly.
Right.
And who knows what normal is next week.
Right.
And I think that right now you're seeing companies adjust to people being at home forever. I think that's the thing that the smart companies are doing, is they're understanding that people are going to be at home until who knows?
Whenever.
Maybe a lot of people aren't going back to the workforce. Maybe a lot of people are a lot of companies aren't going to return to an office. Maybe they're going to have a satellite office and that's all they do. It's very interesting to watch. Absolutely. I think that the election will be what dictates a lot. I think if Trump gets a second term, you're going to see a hell of a lot of, hell of a lot's probably dramatic. You might see a little bit of an economic decline again. And also it depends how long this coronavirus thing goes out. If the vaccine takes another 6 months, which could happen, we're going to have another recession.
Right.
And the funding is not drying up, but it might if that happens. It really depends on what happens during the election.
Yeah, I can see that. I think there's obviously going to be an impact, and of course, after watching the debate the other night, the first debate, I think there's a lot of concern.
Brain masters, just both of them firing on all cylinders.
So, what do people in the tech industry think about whether and again, not getting into size
privately or publicly?
Yeah, privately, what do they think?
I think that, especially in San Francisco, there is a lot of external liberal, internal conservative going on.
Okay.
And I think that some of these people may have voted Trump without admitting it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them are like, can't believe people voted for Trump. And again, if they're in California, it doesn't really matter. But it should, but it didn't. And a lot of these people are like, I really believe in social issues. I believe that Black Lives Matter. Do I believe we should defund the police, though? That's a little bit too much like actually doing something. I like saying these words, but I don't like doing anything about it. That for me is way too far. So there's a lot of that, and that disgusts me. You need to defund the police. We need to reform how we do policing as a verb rather than police departments. Regardless, this is not a podcast about that. But a lot of these people claim that they are very liberal, but deep down they're like, they want theirs. They're selfish. And San Francisco is a lot like that right now. Not necessarily, but I mean, in like any boom town, it's a boom town.
Sure.
It's the success has very much gone to its head. Very much is a case of like San Francisco absolutely thinks shit don't stink. But right now, San Francisco rents are dipping. They're all down. And a lot of these people are kind of confused because all the money was meant to be here and now it isn't. So I think a lot of them may leave. A lot of these tech people may leave, which is good for San Francisco. I think it's a net positive. I don't think San Francisco is quite as liberal as it believes. Just look at how any any of these, the Bay Area, all told. Look at how they've dealt with homeless people.
Right.
Yes, I understand. It's disgusting seeing like physical feces on the street, pee on the street. It is scary having someone yell at you and chase it. Like the homeless, there is a problem, but they see the solution not as a compassionate one, as maybe we need to roll back all the crap that Ronald Reagan did. Maybe we need to address the fact that there is a mental health crisis on the streets. Instead, they see it as, why are these people here? And how do I get rid of these people? Not like fix the problem, which is there. They want to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's so many of these NIMBY types who are like, oh, we can't have homeless people here. Despite the fact on the surface, they talk about these big liberal issues and they believe people should have a better life. It's like, have a better life until it costs me something, in which case.
Right.
And,
yeah.
And it's very interesting to watch their reaction to the pandemic, because honestly, they're going to leave. I think a lot of them will, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, yeah. I mean, we could go on for some time.
No, I could go on for like and then another 2 hours about that. But right. It's, for the most part, San Francisco, I think, is portrayed as a liberal city and really isn't. It's having lived in New York, far less liberal. I wouldn't say if it's as conservative as Raleigh was, but it is definitely not as far as they think.
Yeah, wow, that's that's interesting to say the least too. For you, Ed, you came here to America. Do you have family here? Or is your family kind of still back in London?
Okay. I have family now. My family's all in England. I left them behind. I love them dearly. It's just I don't like England at all. Yeah, I hate it. Okay, I should be clear. I left when I was 22. I didn't like have a wife and a kid that I left back then.
I was just trying to make sure.
Yeah, I probably could have worded that better. No, I left when I was like 22. Right. So I was a kid.
Right.
And I'm happy to be here now. I have a family now, and it's wonderful here. But yeah, my parents and my brothers and sister, they're all there.
Yeah. There you
go. That's good for them. They were planning to come in March. They had tickets booked for March, but thankfully were able to cancel them.
Thankfully.
Well, no, it was funny, actually. There's a great email chain from like early March with my dad.
Yeah.
Who I love dearly, and he's a very smart man, where I was like, look, this pandemic's getting really bad. And I did this the moment they closed like the Lombardy region of Italy.
Yeah.
I was like, I really don't think. And he was like arguing with me about the tickets. I was like, I think this is going to be really bad. And he's like, I really don't know. And it's like, haha, joke's on you.
Right.
No, we've had a good laugh about it since. But no, it's they're all there. And eventually they're going to come visit me in Vegas. And it'll be awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, they'll come and definitely enjoy Vegas.
Way better weather.
Right. Yeah. Except for, like you say, in June and July when it's just...
No, but you know what? I will go to bat with for Vegas weather. It's like 105 to 110, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah.
Which means if you get wet at all, if you go in the pool, it's awesome. It's a delight. If you get misted, it's great. It's not quite as oppressive as Arizona. I don't really know why. Yeah. But and also everyone has AC.
Yeah.
Everyone. So if you're hot, go inside. Everyone will have AC.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Love Vegas.
So for companies now, I guess, how do companies get in touch with you, Ed, you and your team? If someone's starting up their, they got an idea, they're looking to start up their company, or maybe they just started their company a couple of years ago, and they say, listen, we need the type of help that Ed and his team provide. How do they do that, or how do they get in touch with you?
Just EZPR.com. I bought the domain from a actually very honest Korean man. I know, because he responded in Korean to me the first time I emailed him.
Oh yeah, he's very honest then.
No, he was super honest in that he was like, I really want to sell you this, but don't go through a broker. You're going to spend 10%. I was like, I'm not just going to send you money. And then he did it and he was fine. He was like, I don't know why you didn't just give me the money direct, but okay.
Yeah. And
actually, I'm really glad, because I bought it for like $13,000.
Wow.
Which for a 4-letter domain is very cheap.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's like 10% of what you should.
When did you buy it? In what, 2012?
2013, 2012.
Yeah. So I was going to say, yeah, I mean, most of those were all taken up and gone long by then.
Well, that was the thing. It was like a domain squatter. But nevertheless, if you need to contact me, it's just ezpr.com, ed at EZPR, or edzitron, EDZITRON on Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. It's the one place to find me.
There you go. Yep, that's excellent.
Physically come up to me in the street and you'd be more likely to find me on Twitter.
Awesome. And so, Ed, what's, just for people listening and they've learned a lot about kind of your background and, working in that tech space from the media PR standpoint, what are one or two best practices that work for you personally that you think someone that's listening to this can take away, that when they're done listening, they can go implement at least one thing that can help them be, just a little bit better?
If you're going out to the media, if you're pitching a report, say you have a company, you want someone at TechCrunch to write about it. First of all, have an actual reason, have some news and have some real news. Think about it objectively, whether it actually matches anything on that site, but also read actually the reporter's stuff. Read their thing, read a lot of their things. The best thing you can do is actually understand the person you're talking to in any case, but especially with the media and pitching the media, and whatever you send them, make it short. 120 words, 140 words max. You think that sounds like a small amount. It's actually quite oppressive on a screen.
Yeah.
You want it to be something where they can read it quickly and go, this is great, or no thanks. And if they say no thanks, be nice. Don't be butthurt. But read stuff. Read more than you'll ever pitch, because that is the only way you will understand what's around you. And try and you must customize it for them. Find things that are like it. Give them a reason.
Yep. Excellent. No, I love that, being, concise, getting straight to the point, and getting your message across. I think it's something.
Also, just in any sales, any outward sales or, I don't know, earning job, you should do that with anyone. It's not hard to find out about someone. Don't be creepy. Don't talk about their kids.
Right.
Don't know why people do that. Don't go on their Instagram and be like, hey, I saw you cooked ribs.
Right.
That's kind of weird, unless they talk about cooking ribs all the time like I do.
Yeah.
And you just be genuine. It works. And even when it doesn't, it helps over time.
Right. No doubt about it. Ed Zitron is our guest today. Ed, just, a wealth of knowledge, man, CEO of EZPR. Yeah, that's EZPR.com. Make sure you go check him out there and connect with him and his team and let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Ed, last thing, are you going to be podcasting soon? When are we going to get the EZPR podcast? And
I've done several podcasts. I did a podcast called FDF just before the pandemic. Then I was moving and it got difficult. Did a podcast called The Scumbag about weird internet culture for a while. It's actually number one on iTunes briefly. And I have the gear.
Yeah, you have your
soundboard down here. I got all sorts, but it requires time, as you know. You've done 204 of these. Yeah, it actually takes a lot of time, even if you're just doing it an hour a week.
Yeah,
so I've been thinking about doing another one, but it takes a run up.
Yeah, it certainly does. Well, make sure we love to promote podcast here on Minding Your Business. So definitely we want to stay in touch. And if you do decide to launch another one, we want to make sure that we support it. And so make sure I get it so that we can send it out to our audience. And I always like to make sure that our audience is armed and dangerous, kind of like Batman's utility belt, have different gadgets and gears for whatever the situation calls for. So
yeah,
definitely want to do that. So Ed, listen, man, thank you so much for coming here on the podcast, man.
My pleasure.
Work that you're doing. Love your approach, love your attitude, no nonsense. Get it done. I love that, man, about you. Keep doing it. Shout out to your family back over in England. Hopefully y'all can do things together once they come over to Vegas.
Indeed. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, brother. Take care, man.
Cheers.
Be good. All right. So that was our guest, Ed Zitron with EZPR. Make sure you go to EZPR.com. Listen, don't forget for me, ChampronBrooks.com. Make sure you go there. Check me out. All my different ventures and escapades and things that I get into can all be found there. Connect with me there. You can listen to the podcast, connect, learn more about it. You can learn more about my bank consulting practice. You can learn more about what I do on the real estate front. And then you can also pick up the book Legacy Living there as well. So it's all one-stop shop at champronbrooks.com. Listen, we're going to get out of here. Thanks again to my guest, Ed Zitron, again, CEO, EZPR. Very important that you go to EZPR.com. When you get done listening, go ahead and go there. The link is in the show notes right there for your convenience, so you can do just that. Remember, there's 3 things that we all have in common, no matter where we're from, no matter what walk of life. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. And if we keep that in mind, all 3 can be just that much better. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast.